So we are discussing about different types of firewalls. So as the packet is filtered, so we are discussing that the different routes can also be filtered by firewall, and through these we can define that the particular packet or particular path that is used to send the packet from source to destination. That particular path is actually secure for the data to be sent it from source to destination. Then we can select that particular path, and then we can allow the data to be sent it to the particular user using that particular path. So in this way we have different types of routers or different types of routes which are used. So this is this figure further explain the architecture of such type of network, where we are using different types of networks, and they are connected with each other, and they are using different rules for that. And these different rules, it's possible that there could be a system where the firewall is installed, and then it defines the different rules are defined on that system, and then it is connected to other systems. So it's possible that we can also configure the router on some system as well. So the router can be in the device. It could be, or we can also configure the router on the system as well. So that's why we can also configure the firewall rules on that. So that's why it says, this architecture says that this is actually, the router is in the form of a system, and where the routers is configured, and we have configured different firewall rules on that. And when any data is coming in into that system, so that is filtered by that system. Then if it is defined to be allowed by the firewall rules, then it is given an access to the system. And if it is not, it is defined to not to be allowed to enter into the system or enter into the network, then it is not given an access to the system. So in this way we can define particular rules for that, and particular architecture for that can be here. We can also use a device, for example the router, to be connected, to be used to connect to other network, and that defines different routes for that. Now this could be discussed, that why we if we can configure the router on a system, then why we are using the routers. Actually, we have a dedicated system for routing the device, for routing or for sending the different packets, and we are defining the system for different firewall rules. So it's actually that could be efficient as compared to the system where we are defining the firewalls, and we are defining some other application, and it is also doing some other tasks. So that is why we need to have some dedicated system, so that he can be used to connect to other network, and used to perform the tasks which are network related tasks, and which are, for example, the tasks to define some policies or some rules for the network, that which network should be allowed to the system, and which is used to select a particular path for the particular data, that from where the data has to be given an access to the system, or from where the data should not be given an access to the system. So in this way we have different types of routes which can be defined for the network. As as I told you that they are the different routes defined. Like for example, some of the routes are secure routes, some of the route are shortest routes. For example, some of the routes are, for example, base routes. So actually, that depends on the types of or the requirement of the particular application. For example, or the requirement of the particular packet that has been that is need to be sent it to other user, for example. So we can define the routes for the particular data, or we can define the routes for the particular a particular, you can say, application or particular packet or particular connection that is established between source to destination. So in this way, we can select the different routes for the packet. For example, it's also the possibility that sometimes we are sending the data from a route, for example, that uh, it's possible that due to some reason, maybe that particular packet is stopped, for example, and then we can select another route for the same packet to send the data from that packet. So maybe that route would be more secure for that particular packet to send that route or to send that packet. So uh, in this way in this way we have different types of routes which are defined for the particular packet, and we can select a particular route for the particular packet. And this is functionality that is assigned to a router, or that is a main functionality of the router, that he will select a particular route for the particular packet, that from where the packet needs to be sent, which would be the secure packet, secure route for the packet, which would be the shortest route for the packet, or which would be the base route for the packet, so that the packet would be sent it in less time, for example, or the packet should be sent it securely to other system, to other network, for example. So in this way, he can select the base route for the particular packet to send the data. And we have some as we are discussing the dynamic filtering, that has different types of uh, you can say applications. Like for example, in the dynamic filtering, uh, we are using packet filtering, application filtering, or the, for example, circuit gateway. So that depends on, so that's the thing, is that either if we are using the dynamic filtering, so that is a safe method for the particular data is to be sent it to other system or not. For example, if we are if we don't want to give an access to a user to particular application, and then we are using the dynamic filtering, for example, we are using the packet filtering as well as application filtering. So in this way, so we have to carefully define different rules whenever we define the dynamic filtering, because that depends on because we are allowing um, you can say packet filters, you can say we are allowing application filters, we are allowing circuit switch filters. So we have to carefully define different rules for the particular data, so that the data, the particular packet, that should be securely send it to other system. So in this way, we have to define particular rules for that. And then we have different firewalls, for example, that could be that could be scattered through different networks, and these different networks are connected with each other. So in this way, we can define distributed firewalls as well. For example, there could be a central, for example, central firewall, and that is connecting to some other firewalls, and that is defining rules for other firewalls, for example. So in this way, we can have a distributed type of firewall system as well, which is actually consist of the different firewalls which are connected with each other, and they are defining different rules for different systems, or for a network, for example. It's a possible that, for example, if we are using distributed firewall, if any of the firewall, for example, is not working, so we can give an access to some other firewall, so that he can get control and he can monitor to the system. uh, so it's the advantage of using the distributed type of firewall. So there could be possible that the different services which are given an access, then it's very easy to block particular service. So that is also very important in the sense that intruder may taker may try to use different firewall, can access any of the firewall and can try to block particular service for that. So that's actually so that's why we say that we have different advantages of using distributed firewall, and also some disadvantage as well to use a distributed firewall. So we have advantages, and we have also disadvantages for using that, as we are discussing that uh, there's a more possibility for an attacker to use a particular firewall for an for to select a particular firewall to send the data. He can select any of the firewall, and he can block particular service, uh, which is used to be which is given an access to, which is allowed to be given services to that particular user. So in this way, we have different firewalls, and we can filter the data at these firewalls, and we can implement different types of firewalls, like for example, as we are discussing about the dynamic firewalls, we can define some specific firewall. If we say that some specific firewall is defined, like for example, packet filtering or application filtering, or for example, we are defining for the circuit switch, or for TCP layer, for the TCP layer, or we can also use the firewall, which can use a combination of these. And if we are using the firewall that is using the combination of these, then it can select a particular firewall for a particular application, and then for that particular application, it can define different rules that particular packet needs to be allowed, or particular application should be given an access to the system. Like for example, different applications having different protocols like FTP, UDP, ISTMP. So these are the different application protocols which can be given an access to the system. Or for example, as we discussed, that if we are working at the circuit gateway, for example, there could be some sort of active connection, and where we can define some basic connections also. Or we have, for example, different in this way we have different list of the firewalls, or different table which contains different rules for the particular application. Particular data as well is defined as well. For example, if we say that uh, the different rules are defined on the basis of particular data. So dynamically, for example, depends on the particular data, that what is the requirement of the data. Either it requires packets filtering, or it requires application filtering, or it requires you can say circuit gateway filtering, so or transport layer filtering. So in this way, depends on the type of requirement, we are going to define such type of rules. And so that's why we have different filtering tables can be used by a router. Like for example, some of the data is actually uh, is some of the data is actually uh, is can be accessed by the user, and some of the data cannot be accessed by the user. So in this way, we can define different rules for that. So the different rules can be defined for particular data or for particular packet. So in this way, that's why we have different types of tables, as well as define when we define particular rule for the data. So if you have any question up to now, then you can also ask. So that's all about today's lecture. So if you have any question, then you can ask. Yes, do you have any question?
सर ये लेक्चर्स की रिकॉर्डिंग हमें कहाँ मिल सकती है सर? ये एलएमएस वगैरह पे या यूट्यूब वगैरह पे अपलोड करें सर ये रिकॉर्डिंग्स?
Yeah, yeah, I will upload it actually. There's a the problem is coming that when I have there's a long you can say file for the then it takes more time to upload. So that's why it's taking time to upload. So I will tell you that when I upload the complete the recordings, then I will tell you.
ओके सर.
Okay, so that's all about today's lecture. So we will discuss other topics in the next lecture as well. Okay.